This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 312 for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me today is none other than Taudriel, back for a victorious second round. You can find her at twitch.tv/Taudriel, that's Taudriel, with links to all the other things that she does from her Twitch page. And you can also look up the Citadel Cafe episode 287 for her first appearance. Welcome back.
Oh, hello. Thank you.
It's so good to have you on.
I love your intros. Like, they're so good.
Oh, thanks.
There's so many intros out there, and I just love to sit back and listen to your intro. It's so good. But thank you for having me back.
Oh, of course. Anytime. It was a fun little happy accident. I had a hole in the schedule, and I've been doing a lot more streaming lately. And after I finished a stream, I was looking for another Minecraft stream to raid and couldn't find one. There was literally no one that I could find that I recognized. But I saw that you were online. I thought, oh, hey, wait a minute. I know. I'll send everybody over to Todd. And so I know I
harassed you.
Yes. And then you're like, hey, welcome, everybody. Hey, Joel, when am I coming back on this little cafe? I was like, whenever you want.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt it through you telepathically. I knew you needed me, and I came through. So
nice. You're like the Scarlet Witch of the Citadel Cafe. You're my
exactly
my seventh Avenger or whatever
easily.
it is. Yeah. Oh man.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's always a fun time to have you on. Now, last time that we were on, it was more of an interview, but we've actually got some cool stuff to talk about later on in the show. We're going to be continuing to talk about Love, Death, and Robots, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. But before we get to all that, I wanted to ask you, because I mean, you're a Twitch streamer. I think you're a variety streamer, right? Like that's where you.
I guess.
A lot of first-person shooter stuff, but definitely a variety of games.
Yeah, I have a typical theme, but I tend to vary it, get away from that theme quite often, or deviate from that theme. So, yeah, I would definitely stick with variety to keep it safe.
Cool. So, what are you playing right now on Twitch?
I recently, just because I'm waiting for so many releases this year to come out, like The Last of Us 2 and all of the meaty narratives that we all want so badly. I've been playing Rainbow Six Siege like last time, still my obsession. I started to play Tom Clancy's The Division 2, which came out just a couple weeks ago. And that's like a looter shooter, very heavy on grinding game. That I quite like. And Apex Legends, which has kind of, I think, fallen off for a bit, but
for me really?
It's still very...
Because I thought Apex Legends was just everywhere.
You know, what's interesting is so much of my view of the gaming industry is based on Twitch and who is playing what.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so many games kind of rely upon certain broadcasters, streaming it to thousands of people. And I haven't seen a lot of people play Apex recently, but I think it might just be that week where everybody's trying something out because they're kind of burnt out on it. And we'll see a surge again in playership on Twitch. But yeah, it's still very real in my life.
Nice. And the thing is, like, because I went looking for a couple of games as well. Because I have a different niche of games, which usually point me to a different niche of streamer. I mean, happy accident that I've found you, because the games that you play do not normally give me the kind of streamer that I want to watch. So I find you're a very unique case. Because I like tuning in and watching your streams. I have no idea what you're doing. I can sort of keep up because everything
Yeah.
happens so bloody fast.
I think
Uh,
this is a majority of my audience too. Like no one
yeah.
knows what's going on, but they appreciate it. So
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing when you're building a community, people tend to tune in for you and your community. And more, the longer that you're around and the more the community builds, they are less interested in the games that you're playing once they know you. The games that you're playing are more about discoverability. Like, so when I go looking for a new Minecraft stream or I go looking for, I typed this in the other day, much to my disappointment, No Man's Sky. There is
yeah.
nobody is playing that game. I
I miss
found
that game.
five streams and there was less than five people in each of their chat rooms. I was like, oh wow, that
Yeah.
sucks for No Man's Sky because that's a cool game.
Yeah, it really is. Which, ironically enough, one of our episodes we're going to talk about today in Love, Death, and Robots reminded me of No Man's Sky and like makes me want to go back and play that game. And I was like, oh, that's how Joel found me. Uh, so very full circle for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
I miss the game so much. But you're totally right. Most of the people I watch, I don't watch for the games that they're playing. I watch because of them,
So do you think
which is
that Apex Legends has fallen off because of people just it's free to play and so many people were playing it and then so many people got burnt
yeah,
out in it quickly, or do you think it's
yeah.
because of the more recent releases like the Division, what was it called?
Um,
Division 2, Division.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think Division 2 has really taken anyone away from that game. I mean, I'm sure it has, but not in enough, not in a way that's going to affect it at a large proportion. I think it's really more of what you said. I think people just played it so hard, so fast, and everyone was playing it for hours at a time. It was so easy to play for the first few days and just like forget about time existing as a concept. And then it's 2 in the morning and you're like, okay, we've played over 50 games today, like we need to stop.
Hmm.
I think people have done that enough for the past few weeks. And as a game kind of sits on the market, especially a game like this game, like a BR first person shooter, the bugs start to show themselves. People start to exploit those bugs, and that starts to kind of drive away that community as well.
Hmm.
People start to get a little bit more salty than they had been a week ago when people didn't know the exploits. So I think it's a combination of people being burnt out and the game kind of just needing to adjust to its existence on the market.
Right.
Um, and it's also recently released the season one battle pass, which some people loved, some people hated. I personally did choose to invest my money into it because I'm a sucker. But I think that too. I think that made a difference. But I definitely see this game being on the top for a while,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a
regardless.
free to play battle royale for people that don't know. And what I thought was unique to it. Now, I've not played it, but I've seen a couple of streamers play it that I like. And from the outside, to me, it seems like it has a little bit more camaraderie because you have to work in a team of three. Like you have to.
Yeah.
It's not you versus 99 other people. It's your team of three versus a number of other teams in the map to try and see who's going to dominate. And there's only one team that wins, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a kind of forced teamwork aspect.
Yeah.
And not only do you have that, but also there are ways to interact in the game verbally with your character without having to use a mic, which is, I think, a pretty huge thing right now in online gaming for people who really just don't want to use their mics. It
Mm.
enables you to still communicate. Like you can thank your teammate. There's an option to do that. You can say what
Oh.
you need by pinging a certain item on your gun. Like I need an extended mag, and you can kind of click on that on your gun, and your character will say that in game.
Oh,
So I
cool.
think that too, it definitely changes everyone's experience with BRs and just online gaming in general,
Yeah.
um,
Well, because I mean,
which is another reason why I like it.
it crosses two things. You're talking about language barriers, so
Mhm.
you might be playing with somebody in Japan that doesn't speak English very well, or is not doesn't feel confident enough to be on mic to do it, or you could be
Right.
dealing with somebody that has maybe a disability and they can't
Right.
speak, and they want to be able to
Yeah.
play with other friends, and that enabling them to be able to communicate, adequately in game. Because really, the only thing you're probably going to be saying in a game as intense as this is going to be very specific game related, like help, need heals,
Yeah.
like shoot that guy,
Yeah, or like,
like all
"Here's
that
the
kind of stuff.
person who just downed me, let me ping them for you and show you where they're going." Uh, That's
Nice.
oh my gosh, that's so useful in a game like this. And
Mm.
it like for me, like I was saying earlier, I feel like no one's really playing it right now because a lot of my friends stopped playing it for other games.
Mm-hmm.
I can still log in and play with randoms and still win games and get a decent amount of kills and feel like I'm progressing in the game without having to have a squad of my friends play with me.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. So it still frustrates me like any other BR, but
Mm.
it's a good game. I think it has promise.
Do you with the you invested in the was it the battle pass?
Yes.
Now, do you find that that's beneficial to you? Is it just aesthetics? Like, is it just like cooler guns, cooler
No, it's
costumes
not
and stuff?
beneficial to me at all.
No.
Yeah, yeah, it's really a system. It's similar to the one that they have for Fortnite, where if you play at a certain rate and you unlock certain levels within the battle pass, you will unlock certain cosmetics and
Hmm.
get crafting material to make cosmetics that you want in the game. It is very centered around cosmetics. It's not
Yeah.
anything that actually affects your gameplay,
Well, that's cool.
which is why I'm a sucker.
Ah, yeah. Well, I used to like that kind of stuff when I mean back when I never really I don't think I paid for any of that, but I always thought it was really cool. Back when I was playing Heroes of the Storm, I would watch and see the cool skins that would come out, Christmas skins
Yeah,
and stuff. It's just fun. Like it just
it
adds
is.
that level of personalization because there's different classes of character in Apex Legends that I think you can be, and if you wanted to stand out or have a badge of honor, like, hey, not only do I support this game financially because I like it so much, but I've also completed all of these
Yeah,
tasks in game, so now I get to
yeah.
have the pink gun. So if you see me coming at you with the pink gun, you know that I am hot to trot and probably a force to be
Yeah.
reckoned with. And I mean that's kind of cool. I think that's it's nice that I'm glad that the pay to win sort of strategy is long behind everybody. I think mistakes were made by I think Star Wars games and some other stuff, and
Which is
finally,
interesting because this is an EA game, and they've
mm-hmm,
yeah. So that's been
yeah,
another interesting, I think, critique out there about this is now that the battle pass is out and there are processes of spending. I mean, there was a skin recently for the Peacekeeper gun that's a really pretty skin, but you had to spend like $20 to actually get the skin,
right,
which to me personally, that's a bit high.
yeah, that's
And
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of cosmetics, and I think that's a really, really great way to incentivize the consumer to pay more money to a free to play game. But $20 for one item is a little crazy.
yeah, and for virtual goods, like for stuff like that, I find
Yeah,
is
it's hard.
that's a
It's a
decision. Like
wasted investment. Yeah,
that's a meal or two meals, like that, depending on
yeah,
where you want to go
or
to
maybe
eat.
three if you're really savvy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like for me, the non-decision stuff for online things, especially when it comes to art, when it comes to things that I know there was an artist that had to model that, I know that I'm supporting the company that is employing these artists and stuff like that. I feel like $1, like that's like, yeah, sure. If I really want this cool, I don't know, devil horned, helmet or something like that for whatever game I'm playing, I would consider $1. If this game is something
Yeah,
that's eating up 10 or 15 hours of my downtime every
yeah,
week, then sure. But I think I prefer to have a smaller dollar amount in real world money and then have the higher cost of an item. If you're going to put in higher cost, have it be the in-game grind. Like you have to either be good enough, win X amount of matches or whatever to unlock it. Like I feel like
yeah,
that to me is more of a the expense there is just my time. And
absolutely.
I think then I mean sure I'll still have to
Which
pay the dollar, but then I feel prouder of it, I guess.
Yeah, right. I totally understand that, and I agree. I think that's what more looter shooters are focusing towards as well. I think games like The Division 2, Destiny 2, hopefully Borderlands 3 are focusing on those things where they reward, well, to a degree, reward you for the amount of time that you invest in the game, both cosmetically and with weapons that actually help you do really well in the game.
Mm,
So it's not really a pay to win system, it's a grind to win system, which I think is an absolutely fair way
mm-hmm.
to reward the people who are investing hours upon hours in the game that you build.
Yeah.
Um, and then also having a store where if you want to buy this pink skin for your gun, you can,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that's where it's fair. Where it's not fair is when you make it so exclusive and it's so expensive that and it actually affects your gameplay, like it helps you blend into the environment or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which can be problematic. I think that's when you really kind of anger your audience, and that's when you see people
Yeah.
stop. stop playing.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it also has to do with the fun aspect from the other players too. Like it's no fun to be shot and killed by something you can't see and had no
Yeah.
hope of seeing. I'm thinking
Right.
extreme sci-fi stuff like cloaking devices and like depending on
Yeah.
what kind of game you're playing, that's not
Ooh.
a fun mechanic. Whereas if you're just like, well, I saw them and we shot it out and I died, and granted I might not be happy about it, I would at least be able to say like, well, they just outshot me. Like they anticipated my move better. They had the skills to come out on top. I mean, it sucks sometimes when you lose, but I'm usually okay with that kind of a loss. But I
Mm.
remember back when I was doing like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty online. This was before Twitch was even a thing, and we would in some cases we would just be completely owned, and we just could not figure out what was happening. And it was in some cases it was just people that were, you know, not
Exploiting.
yeah, they're playing the game, but they're gaming the game. It's
Yeah.
like shooting around corners blindly. Just if there's
Mm.
no one there, it doesn't matter. You're just shooting to try and get the drop on the other guy, and it's like, well, I'm trying to play this like I'm pretending I'm in a movie. Like I'm waiting to see you before I actually shoot at you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
stuff like that, and that's just amateur stuff on my part, I'm sure too. But yeah, I actually, speaking of time disappearing, I spent a number of hours on Monday night playing Borderlands 2 on Twitch.
Yeah.
I recently, I've always had it. I had it on PC years ago, and I never completed it. I played something like 30 hours or more, and I never did finish it up. I think I ended up not having the time anymore to invest in it. I had played Borderlands 1 on Xbox 360, I think, and really liked
Yeah.
that. But I prefer first person shooters on PC with mouse and keyboard.
Oh yeah.
And so I got into Borderlands 2 and I lost 5 hours. I mean, I had a blast, but normally
Yeah.
my max stream is like 2.5, 3 hours. And I'm kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
guys, I'm kind of tired. I can feel myself lagging a bit. I'm going to go. But I find that with Borderlands 2, there's a lot of action and then there's a lot of moments in between where you can have a breath. And so I wasn't exhausted. Uh, when you engage the enemies in that game, if you're not close enough to them and they don't see you, you have all the time in the world to choose your gun, figure out your strategy, augment your grenade, like just try to figure out how you're going to approach this. I have to kill these 6 guys. And
Mhm.
I had an absolute blast. Not only that, but this game holds up as far as the visuals because
Yep.
it's cell shaded and has that very graphic design, kind of flat black line around everything. It looks phenomenal, even 6 years later.
Yeah. Holds up with the time that
Yeah.
passes.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
get
I've heard
excited. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I've heard the same thing from I've heard many people echo those comments in the past. That's why it's something it's on my list to stream eventually, in the next coming months before 3 comes out.
Mm-hmm. I
Are you super stoked for 3? Did
I'm
you watch everything?
I didn't watch everything. I just saw the trailer. That's all I did. I saw the trailer. I was like, oh
Yeah,
man, I am 100% in because I loved the first
that's
one.
all I need.
I really liked the second one. I just never finished it. And the
Yeah.
sense of humor and the writing in this game, it's so good. I cannot wait to see you play it. Like it's got all the things that I want from a video game. Like it's got the intensity, it's got the controlled pace, whereas on a PvP, Apex Legends sort of situation, again, I've not played, but I know I can't keep up. Like I know it's just going to be high octane for the entire time I'm in
Yeah.
there, and I'm just not going to be able to do it. Whereas with Borderlands 2, because it's like PvE, I can sort of set the expectations and set my pace, which is
Yeah.
good for me for streaming because I mean I'm not used to a busy chat room. So for me to be able to sit there and play Borderlands 2, sorry, I think I said Borderlands 3, but Borderlands 2, to play 2 and be able to stop for a minute, hide behind a barrel, and look at the chat and engage
Yeah.
and make some jokes and then continue on. Like it's a lot more fun for me in that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
highly
so
recommend
excited
them.
for that as well. That kind of game, it sets up perfect. It's very similar to No Man's Sky in ways that you can
Mm.
grind at the level that you want to grind at. You don't have to rush through the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can really just kind of enjoy it and enjoy the interactivity that you have with your chat. That's one thing that I think the Division 2 has kind of taken away from my streams is when I stream it, you think it's set up to be that way. Uh, but I don't play it that way. I play it like I want to get the most out of the time I'm spending in it. So I'm just grinding, 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 and I'm losing that interactivity. And I think because it lacks that kind of what Borderland does present is that dry humor, that awful humor.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and I
It's
think
so
that's going to be a
good.
really great way to tie both, my community and, my gameplay
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, you want to
It'll
keep
be hard for me to not comment on things.
yeah, the character voice audio, you want to keep that up. Claptrap gets a little bit annoying in the early
Yeah.
missions because he repeats himself a lot, but what you want to hear is the profanity that the bad guys are shouting at you, like I'm going to do hopscotch in your in your chest cavity, like it just stuff like that. It's just so creative. It's not even really that vulgar. Like they don't even swear that much. It's more about like
Yeah.
just the gruesome stuff, like, I'm going to pull your tongue out through your nipple. It's just like, what? Oh my god,
Yeah.
it's right out to lunch, and it's so much fun to engage in and play around. I'm looking forward. They announced, I believe, that there's going to be a VR version of
Ooh.
Borderlands, and that to me is really interesting
Ooh.
because I'm slowly but surely looking at building a new PC. I had a meeting with my friend John last night about it, and it's going to be a slow process. It's not something I can afford to do now. I have to pay off some debt and do some other things first. But it's the kind of thing where like I don't need the latest, greatest, hottest thing. I just
Yeah.
need it to do a few very specific things. And something that I find very interesting because I'm not a hardcore gamer, but as an artist, I find the VR space very, very interesting. And there's a couple
Oh
of
yeah.
very cool art programs that allow you to paint in VR and animate in
Yep.
VR and do all this
Which
kind of
is
stuff in 360.
incredible.
Oh, it's so cool, right? And just the idea of infinite world building and to be in it as opposed to around it is very, very interesting. Have you done any
Yeah.
VR gaming? Have you done it with all your first person shooter stuff? Have you
Um,
tried a VR first person shooter at all?
you know what's funny? I think the last one I've tried that would be considered virtual reality is the Call of Duty. I think it was two or three came out on Wii a long time ago.
Okay.
And they created a gun for the game for the Wii that was like you slide your little Wii controller into it and you can shoot that and it's like virtual reality. I think that's the closest thing I've had with a FPS like
Mm-hmm.
shooter game in VR, and it was not great, and that was quite some time ago. Um, I have done a few of the headsets I used to work for Barnes and Noble, and I used to be in charge of their digital side of things. So I
Oh,
would
cool.
do like maker fairs, and I would test the VR sets that they sold. But I've never tried anything like Oculus or any of
Right.
the actual like known headsets.
Yeah. The
I would
big.
love to, but yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't invested personally into it because I don't feel like the software is where I want it to be for me to be an actual worthy investment yet.
Mm-hmm.
And two, the enjoyment I get from it, I think I can enjoy it by watching people do it on YouTube.
Yeah.
um, right now, I recently, because I think it's fascinating and I love that it is absolutely like without a doubt the future of our just entertainment consumption. That is what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know exactly what, but it will stem from this thing that we've done that is
Mm.
VR. So I watched a guy, he was actually in a VR headset for a week, and that was absolutely interesting to watch someone kind of force themselves into that environment.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I haven't actually spent a whole lot of time in it yet. I
It's
would love to though in the
it's
future.
one of those things where like I know it's going to be cool, but I'm worried for my time. Like if I start to be able to
Oh,
paint and design stuff in VR and just start building a
yeah, I
world,
think
like I don't know how many
once it
people I'd
becomes
see.
mainstream and it's affordable to everyone, well, it's closer to affordable to, I would say, the middle class of
Mm-hmm.
America and just general world. As far as like PlayStation 4 and Xbox goes, as soon as everybody has one of those in their house, that's like the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
the beginning of the end of humanity.
Yeah, Ready Player One, here we come, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Which I think is so enticing and so exciting, but I spend so much of my time, and that's one thing that the guy who, and I feel bad that I don't have his name, but it's not like on the top of my head and it's not anywhere I could find it immediately, but he has a channel on YouTube and he spent the week in VR. And one of the things he said he missed the absolute most that he couldn't actually get the feeling of was just nature. He was able to put himself in nature settings. Like he could go on, mountain climbs. He could go into the most beautiful places of the world in his VR if he wanted to, but it didn't quite feel like how, being outside feels. Which of course, you can't feel the air brushing on your arm, you can't smell anything,
Mm,
which I think is kind of what is lacking in VR and will probably more than likely grow to be absolutely incredible, mind-blowing things in the future, but I think that's another reason why it's not mainstream. Um, but yeah, I I think once they nail that, that's the beginning of the end for everyone.
yeah. Well, moving on into the topic for this week, which is Love, Death, and Robots, and additional shorts from that anthology, which is on Netflix right now. Last week, we talked about Sony's Edge, Three Robots, The Witness, and Suits on episode 311. And this week, we're going to talk about a few more. I've watched four. I know, Taudriel, you've watched a few others, so we don't have to stick to the same four. But I'm curious, because this is the first time I've had you on the show in a while. What did you think of the shorts that you were watching?
So I have been watching what I've been consuming recently is so far beyond this show that it's been such a nice, just refreshing. It's funny to say refreshing because everything about the show is not refreshing.
Yeah,
But
really.
as far as just storytelling goes and being able to consume something at a different rate and a different kind of setting, it's
Mm,
been absolutely wonderful. And I think it shocks me enough being horror and being, I guess, as violent as it is, it shocks me enough to make me feel things that I'm not used to feeling,
mm-hmm.
which is very nice. But I definitely have some light criticisms of it as a whole, and I don't know. I think I actually have watched everything that we were planning on talking today.
Okay,
I've watched
cool.
those. I watched a majority. I think the only thing I didn't watch that you guys discussed was Suits. I didn't watch through Suits. I still need to go through that episode. But The Witness, I absolutely loved. I absolutely love that
Wow,
episode.
interesting.
Such an interesting style. I think for me, it shook me out of everything else I've seen from the show. I think I loved it because I just really, really enjoyed the animation.
Mm,
Uh, and I actually did a little bit of digging to see what the animation was and like how they did it and if
mm.
it was what I thought it was because I thought there had to be some kind of CGI element, like
Oh
some kind of
yes.
mocapping,
Yep.
but there's not, and it's not mocapping at all,
Wow.
which kind of blew my mind when I did a little bit of research on that. It's from some Spanish studio, but he kind of broke down the guy who did it. It's a very hard form of animation, and he broke that down, and it's just I think stunning. And there are parts to the episode that I'm just like, wow, why is it this way? But at the same time, it felt like it fit. Like the nudity and the violence theme in the show, I think at times just kind of doesn't sit well with me. But it
Mm-hmm.
fit for me in this, and there was just something so absolutely absurd about it. And then the ending of the episode just was really, I just enjoyed it. I giggled a lot of the time. I giggle a lot in the show, which makes me question myself. um,
I think there was a lot of laughing with Megan last week on the podcast, and I think part of it is that there's a lot of stuff in these shorts that make you uncomfortable, and a
yeah,
lot of us just kind of laugh through the awkward, and that's kind of how you
yeah,
deal with it. But yeah, like I mean, I watched them by myself, so I didn't have anybody there with me.
yeah,
But I could see there's some times that I've watched Game of Thrones and have different people in the room with me when I'm watching it, and that can have a weird effect. Like if something because
yeah,
if something is really violent and you're like, I'm not enjoying this, but I don't know if I should really not enjoy it and be vocal about not being enjoying it because I'm with
yeah.
company, or whether I should, it's hard. You react very differently when you're alone versus when you've got other people in the room.
That's such a good point.
So what I was happy with these four. So this week the ones that I've watched were Sucker of Souls, When the Yogurt Took Over, Beyond the Aquila Rift, and Good Hunting. And yes, When the Yogurt Took Over is precisely what everybody is thinking, and it is just as silly and just as goofy as you think. And that to me was a fun one. But the thing that stood out to me, just kind of as a general kind of anecdote for the chunk that I watched, was that I was really happy to see some classical animations, so some hand drawn
Yeah,
2D stuff versus the video game trailer kind of look to stuff that a lot of it
yeah,
has.
yeah,
Which is, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that there's an awful lot of that out there, and I thought that these were kind of unique. And I thought, in some ways, that the hand-drawn animation minimized the violence for me in a way that,
Yeah.
because, like, say, Sucker of Souls, which was put on by a Parisian studio, it's Studio La Cachette. Right away, I knew it was French animation. Like, I've seen enough animated shorts over the years to be able to recognize a certain type of aesthetic and style and timing that French animation has. And the violence in that is so over the top. You know, like somebody loses their head when a demon cuts it off, and it's like watching a fire hose of blood come out of this person's neck. And so it's unrealistic, right? It's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's the same kind of thing like when you have an anime character that shoots a fireball out of his fist and that kind of like crazy whoosh animation that happens. Well, that's what was
Right.
happening with this guy's neck, except for it was just blood going everywhere. And
Yeah.
so I thought that it was over the top, but for whatever reason, because it's hand drawn, there's not this there's no uncanny valley. Like they're not trying at all to be realistic, right?
Absolutely.
And so you
It
kind
has a
of
lack of connection to reality, and
yeah,
it's truly just meant to, and not only that, but it like paired with the humorous writing that is
yeah,
this episode. This episode has so many ridiculous jokes in it.
yeah,
That which I found myself just giggling throughout it, and it felt appropriate. It felt like they were trying to make me laugh.
yeah.
But you're right, it totally takes away. There's a scene where they do the animation and the guy, and I mean, I almost said not to spoil this, but I guess people are expecting the spoil.
Yeah.
Um, but the guy, he gets chopped in half, and like it splits every part of his body. As far as the
Yeah.
animation goes, it takes away his skin, it shows his muscles, it takes away that, it shows his guts, and then his brain,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's no like no cringe factor, no like get at the bottom of my gut, I don't feel
Yeah.
bad feelings. It
Yeah.
works fine.
Yeah, or
And
you
yeah, that was
compare
a
it to
great.
something visceral like when the mountain crushes the viper in Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
like that had I could they don't even really show it, and you're squirming in your chair because it's a
Yeah.
real person on screen, right? Like, and
Yeah.
special effects are these days are to the point where it's like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, and I feel like with um, this particular short, the premise is that it's an archaeological excavation unearths a bloodthirsty demon. They call him Dracula in the short, but nothing in this seems traditional about Dracula. Like it's all
Yeah.
very
Well,
weird
they call
four-legged
him
monster.
Dracula, and then they call him the Impaler,
Yeah.
which is another theme I find in this show. Is just like the theme of impaling,
Oh yes. Yeah. There's a lot of
which
stuff being stuck through people. Yeah.
yeah, which
Yeah.
I find really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you tie it into other like just like you said visceral themes in the show with
Mm-hmm.
the nudity and just like the overt sex scenes. It's very interesting to try to like tie those together and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then at the same time just look at it for face value. And these I think these types of animations, these types of episodes, they're a really great I guess break from the visceral
Yes.
reality of the other animated
Mm-hmm.
episodes that feel very real. So I think these have a really, really important part in this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I was under the impression that all of the shorts had to have some sort of reference to love, death, and robots, but I did not
Right.
catch any reference to robots in the Sucker of Souls. It was all about death. There was no love either.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. But I've also noticed, like, even in The Witness, I don't think there was a reference to robots. Was there? I think it
Mm,
was just death and, like, I guess love, depending upon your definition of
yeah,
love.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
I mean, there have been definite themes that kind of overlap each other in each episode, but I think there are some episodes that don't have one,
Yeah.
um, which
I
I'm fine with.
Yeah, I find some of the shorts that I've enjoyed a little bit more have been slightly longer because the longer ones, if there is violence and a battle or any kind of thing, the shorter the animation, the shorter the film, the less of a reason that you have for the violence
Yeah,
or nudity. So then
yeah.
it feels more gratuitous at that point.
Hmm.
Whereas things like, I mean, Sucker of Souls wasn't terribly long. I don't remember how long it was, but it felt fine. But it just felt like, it doesn't feel like a short. It just feels like a chase scene, right? Like it doesn't feel like a whole story. It just feels like we just have to unleash the demon and get to the part where it chases the bad guys and they have to shoot
Yeah.
at stuff, right?
It felt like a very grungy Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of go that way. And I mean, and there's great, like you said, there's fun references. I mean, it's weird. I still find it an odd disconnect for me to be watching something that looks like a kid's cartoon, but then
Mhm.
have the characters say fuck and shit and make
I love it.
yeah, it's fine. It doesn't bug me, but it kind of pings this thing in my brain where it's like, oh right, people can swear in cartoons, like that's allowed,
Yeah.
right? Because most of what you see in animation, like for example, watching stuff like the Troll Hunters or Dragon Prince and all the stuff that looks really cool these days, and even if it is aimed at a slightly older audience, you still don't get much of the swear dropping. You know, like Game of Thrones, and I'm using that as a reference a lot because it seems to be the most I guess the most relevant in terms of pop culture right now. But there's no animation equivalent on HBO or extended cable that has this kind of stuff going on in it that we all are aware of. This is the first time that we've seen it in kind of a paywalled, Netflix subscription sort of community. So it's been interesting to see this kind of stuff unfold. And in some cases, I feel like it's very well handled,
Yeah.
and the point of the sword is very well aimed. And in other
Mhm.
cases, I find it's kind of a crapshoot. I really enjoyed Beyond the Aquila Rift. So
Yes,
this is
so did I.
done, yeah, this is done by an award-winning studio, Unit Image in Paris, and they've done a lot of the game trailers for like Call of Duty, and I think they did the trailer for the Division 2.
Oh.
Yeah, so they are talented, and to watch this short, and it's more like 17 minutes long,
Mhm.
about a mission to reach beyond the Aquila Rift. An error happens in the routing, and an unexpected event happens that puts the pilot and his crew in a place that they didn't expect to be. And I won't reveal the twist at the end of this because I thought it was very well crafted. But the visuals of watching what you can do now, it didn't feel feature film CG. Like you didn't feel like you're watching like The Vision or Spider Man or something like that.
Right.
But in some cases, I felt like there was uncanny valley, and I was like, "Ooh, wow, his face doesn't look quite right," or her face.
During the scene where I think like they are together and they like make love the first time
Mm-hmm.
that we get to see, I was like I thought that that was mocapped like CGI, like these are real humans.
Yeah,
This is not animation, which I haven't actually looked into that, but that was my feeling throughout that entire. And then that scene ends, and then that's when I am reintroduced to the animation. I can tell that there is animation when he is
yeah.
kind of smoking the cigarette and she's trying to antagonize him. Um,
There's something about when characters put things in their mouths in these video game type trailer animations that it doesn't quite feel right. I've always
uh,
found in a lot of, I mean, it's much better now, but early on in video games, I've always found that lip sync or teeth inside of mouths always felt weird to me. Uh, like there was too
yeah.
many shortcuts being taken. But with films like this, I mean, I never once felt like the lip sync was off. It was something to do with the eyes and the depth
Mm,
of the skin. It's like, like their eye sockets and eyelashes and stuff didn't seem to give enough depth or something. But there's other
yeah.
places where I was just like, wait a minute, did they just overlap like real footage of a person and kind of like mesh the two together? And it's not at all. It's all animation because the woman that does the voice for Greta, the voice actor, looks nothing like Greta.
No.
However, the actor, and I don't remember his name, that plays Tom, looks like Tom. Like it's
Yeah.
one of those situations where like the actor's face is really in the short. Same with, I can't remember her name, Pam or something. The co-pilot that gets woken up throughout a couple
Oh,
times.
really?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the actor that voices her, it's a spitting image. Like you can tell that they
Interesting.
scanned her face and they did something to make it look like her. And
Hmm. Which is
man,
common in video game
yes,
animation.
yeah, yeah. But I really enjoyed the writing, and it's actually based on a series of sci-fi shorts from the
Ah,
same name, by Alistair Reynolds. So you can look up.
yes, I was like, is this something I've like read before? It felt
Mm-hmm.
like not, I mean, it's simulation theory, so of
Mm-hmm.
course, and I'm obsessed with simulation theory, which is why I think
Nice.
this episode was so good for me. It also felt very like Frodo, like this is the alternate dimension where Frodo would have like stayed with Shelob the spider,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the world he's living in now.
Yeah.
Where he's in this perpetual like reawakening and reimagining of this terrible demon that has him. Um,
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved it so much. And no, I think this was one of the shorts that it felt appropriate at the length that it was. The storytelling was creepy enough, but didn't have to be, this like ridiculous gore fest.
Yeah. There was no gore in it. Like there was,
Yeah.
I don't remember any at all. I mean, there was emaciated and dead people, but
Yeah.
not like no one was dying. Like no one was being
Right.
ripped to shreds or
Yeah, no
cut in
limbs
half.
were flying anywhere,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there
that
was
kind of
no
thing.
blood really.
Yeah, and that to me made it more of a horror
Yeah, me too.
story. Like I
Which I think
enjoyed that much more.
I connect to horror that a lot
Mm,
more than I connect to just,
yeah,
blind hack and slash. Which
yeah.
I have a respect for that. It's just less of a impact on me, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of being trapped,
Yeah.
somewhere, anywhere, is
Mhm.
terrifying because it's not you. It's the worst way to go because you get to see it coming for miles,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
you're stuck.
And there's
And
no need for explanation. Like we get a very simple, like, okay, they're going into a wormhole or whatever it is they're going
yep.
into. They need to, secure their bodies because the human body has still not evolved in this time
Mm-hmm.
to be able to travel a long distance. Like we have the answers so quickly. The setup is so easy. And I think it's almost a classic, and it is if it's the Alistair Reynolds retelling.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic story that we're also used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
think he
he
did a
wrote
really
the
great
short
job.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I like the dialogue as well. There once you realize where it's gone, like in the last few minutes, and you realize what was really going on, and you hear Greta speak, and the way that she dodges Tom's questions,
Mhm.
and uses his name very very frequently,
Mhm.
you start to realize just how often she did that in the short, and you're like, yeah, that was weird. And it's one of those things that you don't really notice right away. But if any of my friends, and I've done this with my friend Chad, when I text him, every once in a while I'll bug him and I'll just refer to him by saying, "Hey Chad, how are you?" And he's like, "Stop it, just stop," because we've known each other for 25 years. It's, "Hey dude, hey man, what's up? How are
Yeah,
you?"
yeah.
Like, there's no need to like get his attention out of a sea of people. I don't have to yell
Yeah.
Chad to get him to turn around. And
Right.
so when you start to use someone's first name in a situation where you're supposed to be fairly intimate with someone,
Mhm.
then it feels weird. And
Yeah.
it's just pop culture. It's just the way that society works right now. Even in a partnered situation, like you often end up calling your partner hun
Oh,
or
yeah.
hey. Like you don't necessarily have to say, you know, hey Sarah, or hey Bob.
Yeah.
If my girlfriend said hey Joel all the time, it would be weird.
Yeah,
Like
we
it.
assign pet names to people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, something is off about this. She's just being too sincere, or too
That's
formal for
interesting.
the intimacy that they were portraying. It was very very
Yeah.
odd. Because and I find that very funny. Like when you're in a, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but when you're in a business situation, like when you're in a business meeting and like the person you're talking to is using your first name repeatedly, it's just kind of like, okay, I get it. You
Yeah.
remember my first name. I understand. You don't have
Right.
to. It's like the car salesman just keeps on
Yeah.
calling
It's
you.
a very formal way of communicating, like
Yeah.
you understanding the existence of another human.
Yeah.
And you're right. And I think I knew, like, I didn't necessarily tie it directly to the way that she was kind of communicating with him. I just thought something was sketchy because
Yeah.
as soon as the response from the other from the I guess the woman who actually plugged in the directions, as soon as I saw her response and she was freaking out, I was like, okay, something's going on, something's very
Mm.
strange.
Mm-hmm.
And then they immediately go straight to like just back to their normal relationship,
Yep.
and they're in bed together. And I was like, okay, what has she done? Does she literally just like maroon this man so she can like just get some? Like, is this what we're doing? Because I'm here for it, but also like what else is going on? So I was waiting for something to happen. Definitely didn't expect it to be a demon spider in the middle of like
Mm-hmm.
a strange part of the universe. That was really interesting. But I did enjoy that. That's where, as soon as he woke up and I saw like that doom hellscape that we got, that's when I was like, okay, this is now fitting into the show that I've been watching.
Yeah, yeah. It
This now
really
works.
really balanced itself out at the end. I
Yep.
how did you? I'm curious. How did you feel about the nudity in this one? Because I mean, there's some places where I felt it made
It felt
sense.
comfortable for me, I
Yeah.
think. For this one in particular, every episode is very different for me, and I feel like almost every episode has some form of nudity. But this one,
Mm.
because there was like an actual physical connection, and there was like an actual like it felt a little bit more organic. There was like they knew who they were. They
There was a
weren't
history.
just
Yeah.
yeah, and it didn't feel like I was looking at breasts because the director wanted me to see breast as a shocking image.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a natural part of the telling of the story,
Yeah.
um,
I
which I
I
was fine with.
I felt weird when when Greta was explaining to Tom where they were in the galaxy and just how lost he was, I thought it was weird that she was still topless. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it's in that case, it's maybe I'm being oversensitive. Like, it's just boobs, Joel. Like, just get over it. He's
Right.
in a pair of tighty whities. It's not like he's clothed. Like, I mean, he's
Right.
covered in
And
the bottom, and yeah,
he's
and she's, yeah, and
bare
she's,
breasted,
yeah,
bare chested.
bare chested, and she's also covered on the bottom. She's got a pair of panties on.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like, I mean, they're equally clothed, really.
Right, yeah.
But
Which to me in that setting I think would make sense. Like imagining being in a hotel, like
yeah,
being in a private setting, just having had like, an intimate moment with
mm-hmm,
someone.
mm-hmm,
My thing is probably going to be I'm going to put a certain part of clothing on and the other part more than likely not if I'm comfortable with this person.
right, yeah,
So it
yeah.
worked for me. I thought that was fine. But there are so many parts in this show where I'm just like, what? Like why
Oh yeah, yeah.
why did I just see nipple? Like what?
Yeah, well, and for me, we touched it a little bit on last week, and it's worth repeating that a lot of these do sort of feel like a 14-year-old's wet dream. Like they,
Which I hate to admit this, but as soon as I think as soon as I had that feeling of like, why am I seeing so much breast and so many breasts that are, it's not only just breasts, but it's also like same body type of woman.
mm-hmm,
It's the same size breast every time.
mm-hmm,
Like it's a very clear, in my opinion, it could be a collective fantasy of the creators, but it's a very clear fantasy. Like you're not showing me different forms of nudity. You're showing me one very particular form of
mm-hmm,
nudity. So that immediately turned me to like, okay, let's see who these people are that are creating the show because I'm
mm-hmm.
very interested in what that's going to look like. Trying my best not to judge them, but at the same
Yeah,
time, like, what is your like? I'm just very curious on some of the nudity makes sense to me. It does good things for the art. It does good things for the storytelling. It enhances the emotions I have, and other times it just very much pulls me out.
yeah. No, I
Like
agree.
one of my favorite episodes was the Sunny's Edge or
Oh
Sony's
yeah,
Edge,
sure.
and I think when she's being kind of lured in by the woman that she obviously thought was attractive,
Yeah, the white dressed
and
lady. Yeah.
like yeah, and like her boobs are cut. Her just like 1 minute I look over to get my drink and I'm looking back and her like top is off and it's a dress, and I'm like that's such an awkward way to. It was just I laughed like I literally just and it wasn't an
Mm.
uncomfortable laugh. It was just like what is this?
Yeah.
Like I thought this was gonna be good, but it felt so out of place and absolutely unnecessary. Like they could have just kissed. Like we didn't need
Yeah,
boobs.
you didn't
Um,
you needed seduction. You didn't
yeah,
need like
boobs doesn't equal seduction.
exactly. Well, and this is the thing. Love, Death and Robots. I've
Yeah,
not seen a whole lot of love. I have seen
yeah,
some, but not
yeah.
much, right?
Very interesting definitions of love. Very centric to one definition, I think, of
Yeah,
love, and
physical
it's
love, not
very
emotional, right?
unhealthy. Yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly. And in some ways, I'm watching these and thinking, like, do we really need more of this? Like, isn't this
right.
by and large a biggest, probably one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest stereotypes that gamers have to battle against when they have like a balanced outlook is that the general public will look at most popular video games as overly violent, overly
Yeah.
sexualized,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. This kind of content is not helping.
Yeah.
Like it's
And
not.
you say that, and I don't even know if it's centric to video games. I think it's just sci-fi culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't,
That's true.
I might lose some fans for saying this, but that's one of the reasons why I kind of got turned off of watching Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no, I
and
agree.
and I think it's a very and I know people do share this opinion, but I think overall a lot of people don't. Is like the violence and the rape, especially towards women. For me, it's just not like yeah, I get it's an important story, but like we know it and we've seen it
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate the redemption and like the being able to slam your head through the chest of the thing that tried to rape you kind of thing, the imagery that they're giving us,
Yeah.
but at the same time like take a different route, choose something different, don't tell me that same story because it is kind of built in the same bones of the same thing that I've seen over and over again.
Yeah. No, I
And if you're
agree.
going to use something as I think visceral as nudity and kind of like guise it with art, then do it in a way that is artful, not in a way that is just meant to shock me. And
Shock and awe. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. And actually, that leads me into Good Hunting, which is the one of the other episodes that I watched this week. And this is the first time I think in the 8 episodes that I've watched now where I felt like the level of violence and nudity was appropriate for how you were supposed to feel in the story.
Yeah.
It was animated by Red Dog Culture House in South Korea. It's another classically animated short, very well done. Different kind of character design stuff. Some things I liked, some things I didn't, but ultimately it's still a very, very well animated short.
Mhm.
And the premise is that in the early 20th century China, a boy becomes friends with a shape shifting, I can't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, hooligan.
Yes.
After his father kills the hooligan's mother, years later, living in a steampunk Hong Kong, they find each other again. And it's a really interesting story. And it's also the first hint of love, and in a almost like a not even romantic, it's almost like they're friends.
Forbidden kind of
Yeah,
love.
forbidden
Yeah.
love, or
Yeah, there was a more I think the friendship was a little bit more esteemed in the situation than
yeah,
the actual like passion for each other. He was
yeah,
definitely more interested in making sure she was just okay,
yes, yeah,
regardless of there being like a clear connection, romantically.
yeah. And so
Like they
the
just cared for one another.
and the female hooligan, which is like a fox type cat character.
It's like a
Uh,
Pokemon.
yeah, almost very similar. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pokemon designs got influence from that kind of folklore,
Right.
right?
Right.
But she's a victim. Her mother is murdered by a hooligan hunter. She is then, as steam engines take over the countryside, magic is stripped from the world, so she loses her powers. So she has to become uh, uh, essentially a prostitute to make ends meet. So she's still bewitching men, but she's doing it physically as opposed to using magical powers to do it.
Right.
And so she's, in a situation where she's a kept woman by a governor, and there's a lot of really overlapping. Uh, there's two major overlapping themes that I caught. One is the strong message about violence against women, but also about colonial racism, where a
Absolutely.
lot of the
And just
British
colonialism in general, yeah.
yeah, well, a lot of the British, kind of settlers and all this kind of stuff in China and in the English part of Hong Kong are, speaking down to Chinamen. They're speaking, they think less of them. They think that the women are all horny all the time and
Or
will,
just objects for them.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And I did not expect it to go steampunk because
Yeah, that was interesting.
yeah, because I didn't read the description beforehand, and I encourage people to not to read them. Just hit play and hit next, and just
Yeah.
get what you get, and
Yep.
then go back and check later. But yeah, like I really enjoyed the long passage of time over like this young boy. His father dies, and how he becomes a man, and how he finds out what he's good at, and how he has to deal with like, well, I fix their machines, their precious
Yeah.
machines, but hey, it's
Like what
given.
his role in colonialism was really
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And there's excellent animation and some CG stuff, obviously, with like blimps and trains and
Yeah.
clockwork gears. And it gets into the stuff where he makes like a little clockwork bunny. But
Yep.
what I was not expecting was the hooligan to find him again and reveal to him that she has been completely butchered. Like she has been
Yeah,
replaced by
mutilated.
machine.
Hmm.
From the neck down, she's just all mechanical parts. And she wants him as a master. I can't remember what he calls it. He calls it biotech or bio something. Uh, and so he is able to give her a new body that restores her ability to change shape.
Transform.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he turns her into a transformer, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she can go out and hunt again and
Which
take
was amazing.
yes, and take revenge on the men that
Yeah.
either hurt her or were about to hurt other women.
Right.
And
Which felt very similar to how they told the story with Sony's Edge.
yes,
The whole
yes,
idea of mutilating to then, go back and mutilate.
yeah. But in
Yeah.
this one, they give you just enough. Like there's a violent confrontation between her and the governor, and it's grotesque. It's one of those situations where you get to see nudity where it's not necessarily ideal. It's male nudity, but he's
Oh, right.
horribly overweight. He makes your skin crawl all over.
Right.
Like everything about him is creepy. Uh, and that when she does kill him, they show you how, but they don't show you the gory details. They
Yeah.
leave that to your imagination and the sound effects, and then they cut
It's
quite
funny because
quickly
I
away.
also I actually like winced in that moment. I was like, okay, I don't want to watch this, so I didn't actually know if they showed us or not.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. That's the kind of thing where violence is made. It's made to make you feel appropriate for the scene. You
Right.
feel irked out, even though you're happy it's happening to him because he's a terrible human being.
Absolutely.
You feel terrible for any of the women in this because the voice acting and the character acting, they feel very much afraid. You hate the men that are doing this to them and cornering them in the short. And at the same time, when the hooligan is able to receive her new body and attack the men in the alley, she leaps in, they scream, and that's the end. They cut. And so
Yep.
your imagination is just left to however you feel appropriate for her to win, whether it's beat them up, whether it's kill them, whether it's rip them limb from limb, whatever it is, you are left to give the appropriate ending as to how how you would feel about it. And
Absolutely.
and I
Which I
like
think
that.
is a theme that's rooted in this show.
Mm,
Even if they do show you even if they do show you visceral just gore and absolute nudity and absolute just like limbs being ripped and blood everywhere, I think it's meant to leave it to the actual audience and allow the audience to kind of feel whatever they have to feel.
mm,
Like I think that's very clearly what they're trying to do with theirs. I mean, that I think that's storytelling 101, but I think for this show in specific, you can tell. Like, of course, I think one of the main roots is just animation in general and being able to tell stories through animation. And then after that, with the horror and the just sci-fi theme, it's
mm-hmm,
meant to really just make people feel and not just kind of numb out, but you actually have to feel, whether
mm-hmm.
it be visual or you're making it up in your own mind.
And this one, the Good Hunting episode, is the one that I felt where any kind of violence or sexuality that I was exposed to felt appropriate for the story.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel forced to me. It didn't feel it. I mean, I'm not saying it was good. Like it didn't make me feel good. I felt bad when I
Right,
was supposed
right,
to feel bad. But
right.
but it did not feel gratuitous. Didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel. Um, I guess in some ways it does kind of land on that point that you made earlier about all the women have the same body type.
Yeah.
But
Like I feel like they use the same model for boobs on every time they showed the
yeah,
boobs.
they kind of do. Even when
They're like, all
she's a
right, you have to make
mechanical.
it this size. Like
Yeah, yeah, they're
even
very
when she's a
careful.
mechanical, even when she's a like transformed into a fox and is like a hybrid and has fox boobs.
Yeah, that's right.
Like even then the boobs are the same size. Like for me,
Yeah.
which like yeah, like I'm here for that obviously, but at the same time, like it's just very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like let's talk about
I
that.
on one hand I'm glad that it's at least all well, I mean there's a lot of robots and there's a lot of like cybernetics and stuff, but for the most part the nudity does not seem to be a lot of augmented stuff. Like there's not great big plastic,
Oh yeah,
fake boobs or things like that. Uh,
that's true.
which is nice because a lot of times in I find in a lot of video game designs and concept art that I consume that you're just like, God, really, could we just draw someone that's petite, or
Yeah.
athletic, or like you said, give some variety. I'm
Right.
disappointed so far in that there hasn't been, like you said, some different body types. Like I'm curious because I'm trying to remember the name of her character in Overwatch. She's the Russian with the pink hair. Um,
Yeah,
something
Zarya.
Zarya, yeah. I mean, that kind of body type in one of these shorts would be really interesting.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and same with men. Like they've shown some big burly men with big bellies and big arms, but most of the
Yeah.
dudes are just like,
Well, and not even just
shepherd.
body type, but like it's mostly stories of white people or people who
Yes.
have lighter skin.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't finished the season,
Mm-hmm.
but like you're telling story through animation and you're still animating mostly European,
Yep.
mostly like lighter skinned humans
Yep.
or robots, like,
Yeah.
and you're still not really telling the perspective from somebody
There
with a
was
person of color.
there was at least not in the main characters. I mean, Beyond the Aquila Rift had Hispanic and African American, and but they were secondary characters and in it for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And
If
then
anything, they were afterthoughts.
yeah, and now granted, the two main characters in Good Hunting are Chinese, but because it's not CG, because it's a hand drawn,
Yeah.
they're kind of whitewashed. Uh,
Exactly. And it's still a story
yeah,
that's so centered around racism.
right. Yeah,
Like we're
yeah.
still like the race is meant to show you how they are different. Like
Hmm.
it's not just showing a story of a person who is Chinese, it's showing a story of a person who is Chinese who's experiencing racism.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think those are kind of the weak points for me is just kind of lack of storytelling from different lenses.
Mm-hmm.
Although there is like obviously different sexualities, and it is showing nudity in ways that aren't inherently sexual,
Mm-hmm.
which I can appreciate at times. Like I said, I feel like with The Witness, it was shocking to me that she was running around naked. But it kind of to what you're saying about Good Hunting, that you felt like the nudity was necessary to the storytelling. It felt like it made sense to me why she was naked.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. Like it made me uncomfortable, but at the same time, I could put myself in her situation and say that's exactly what I would have done.
Right.
My my that wouldn't have been my priority. My priority would have been my life, not to like cover myself fully. So I think it made sense. And she wouldn't have had time to put on, a full outfit anyway. So the
Yeah.
fact that the animator just made her put a robe on and she grabbed her stuff and ran made sense to me.
Yeah.
And it was just ridiculous. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it just was
something about The
silly.
Witness that I definitely felt was the threat. Like he really felt
Yes.
threatening, and she
Mouse chase
felt very
fully.
scared.
It was
Yeah, it was
absolutely a chase 101, like
Yeah.
exactly what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And you should, as the audience member, should be afraid
Mm-hmm.
when you don't even really know why. Like we don't actually know the story. We just kind of assume the entire. That's the whole. There's very little dialogue. You spend a lot of your time just assuming what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like exactly what a cat and mouse chase is.
Well, speaking of whitewashing, When the Yogurt Took Over is a light-hearted short about yogurt developed by scientists becoming sentient and taking over the world. And I think it's a nice light-hearted way to wrap up this episode because it's animated by Blow Studio, who also did Three Robots, which is the film with the three robots that we talked about last week. And it's a Spanish studio. It is very funny. Reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, that kind of humor and that kind of aesthetic. I mean, how did you feel about something this completely out of left field compared to all the other stuff that we've been watching?
I quite liked the animation. I think it lent to the humor, and I loved how funny it was as well because it was very short. I think it was like a 6-minute
Oh yeah,
episode.
easily.
And but I also think at the same time had this underlying tone of just like sheer darkness and depression. It's talking, I mean, you can replace, the yogurt with any other form of creation that we're working on right now as
Mm-hmm.
humans, like just AI in general, and things that actually could become sentient. Like we can actually conceptualize that outside of yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what really hit hard to me, which I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about, which I have been spending more time thinking about now since I've watched this episode, is, what if we did create, AI, some form of robot that kind of took over and then became the answer to all of our problems and then decided to leave? Like, what if that did happen to humanity? Like, if that was like our answer to not self-destruction and then it chooses to leave us, like that just is so interesting to me. So I for that reason specifically, I wasn't able to enjoy it, I think, as much for its humor because I did go straight to like its implications.
Oh, the darkness, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't go the direction like the Ultron direction, right? Which is the
Yeah.
create the AI to help protect us and help save us, and the first thing the AI does is analyze the fact that the Earth, in order to survive, needs to not have humans on it. So bye bye humans,
Yeah.
right? And like that's where everybody always goes with this. But instead, it gave everybody the opportunity. It's like I have fixed. Here is a plan. This will save all of you, but
And the
you
humans are uncomfortable,
yeah.
but they deal with it.
Yeah, but you can't deviate from this. You have to stick to the plan. And of course, the humans are like, we know better. We'll stick to part of your plan, and it doesn't work. It goes to hell in a handbasket in a heartbeat. And
Mhm.
so eventually, the humans have to listen to the yogurt, and then live in Ohio where everything is hunky dory and happy, which is such a funny, odd sort of thing. That like,
Ohio.
yeah, Ohio, yeah. It does, what do you want? Payment? We want Ohio. What? Why? Anyway, it would seem like such an odd, quirky thing to do, but I really enjoyed the production design. Like it's quirky enough, and there's no dialogue in it. It's just a voiceover, and to kind of lend the ominous feeling to it. It's narrated by Maurice LaMarche,
Yeah. Yeah.
who is the voice of Brain from Pinky and the Brain, those old Warner Brothers cartoons where Pinky and the
Yep.
Brain try to take over the world every night. And so he doesn't do the Brain voice, but he's real close. Like his natural speaking voice is not too far off, so he's quite
Yep.
recognizable. And man, like it just added that extra layer of like I just love that this is just they're talking about sentient yogurt taking over the world, but it's such a matter of fact thing. Like, it's not tongue in cheek. The narrator is just reading the lines deadpan, no matter
Oh
how
yeah,
silly and ridiculous they are.
very simple. This is what it has happened. Like, deal with it situation.
Yeah.
Yep,
I'm glad that they pepper these in because you need that breath between,
absolutely.
between these hard hitting, violent, and horror, existential sort of shorts. But I really enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to. So far, I've got like 1 in 4, so 25% of what I've been watching has a light twist to it,
Mhm.
dark humor, but at least it's got some fun to it. So I'm thinking that if that stays true, then the rest of these are going to be fun because you're going to get that respite, like every 3 to 5 episodes, you're probably going to have a little bit of a break. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to taking care of the rest. But that is unfortunately all the time that we have for this episode of the Citadel Cafe. If you've enjoyed this, you can head on over to thecitadelcafe.com where there's going to be notes and links to all the stuff that Todd and I talked about today. The music, of course, was composed by Kevin MacLeod. And if you are a person that likes to support independent podcasting, you can do so at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. We are currently gunning to have one more patron in April than we did in March. It's a small ask. If it's the kind of thing that you're interested in, then there is a Discord where we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. We're talking about video games, Lego. Game of Thrones is coming. Avengers Endgame is coming. There's spoiler rooms for those. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Check us out at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe and become a member and help support this show. Todd, thank you so much for being on the show. It's so good to have you back. Where can people find you and all the cool stuff that you're doing online?
You can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taudriel. That's where I spend a lot of my time, or at least 3 days a week, sometimes more, playing video games, talking about stuff like this. A lot of the time before my show, I will talk about, stuff that I'm watching. So I'll
Nice.
probably extend this conversation today on my stream. You can also follow me on Twitter. It's just at Taudriel, the same spelling, and on Instagram at Taudriel with an extra L. Because I'm extra on Instagram. So
You're extra.
go.
Well,
Yeah.
it's all the plants. It's the green thumb that you got going on Instagram that I think everybody
Exactly.
needs to
Oh,
go
it's
check
such
out.
a beautiful time in Texas right now. So yeah, I'm having to take photos of flowers as much as
Oh
possible.
man, your Instagram is it's really worth it because it's this beautiful like deviation from what normally you see with the Twitch content and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I will have links to all this in the show notes, but I'm sure that people will be able to find you. So thanks again. This has been super fun.
Oh, thank you.
As always, my name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I am up to online at joelduggan.com. If you're interested in hiring me, just drop me a line there. Don't forget to tune into my other podcasts. Right now, the focus is on the Spawn Chunks, which is the Minecraft podcast that I do. Everything online is just Twitch, Twitter, Instagram. It's all just my name, Joel Duggan, and that's it. This has been the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.
Bye.